Middag graad 11s. I just want to make a quick video. You guys have the memo of this worksheet just to talk you through it. So I'm going to start right off. So for number 1, when we are calculating the size of x, you had to see that BD subtends the 70 at the circle, at the midpoint of the circle, and it subtends this angle x at the circle circumference. In other words, it will be 35, and your reason, I'm just going to jump around between these two, and your reason will be the angle at the center is twice the angle at the circle circumference. Dan wanneer ons gaan kyk na die hoek Y, doen hulle almal vir my in alfabetiese volgorde sover as wat julle kan. You had to see that this forms a cyclic quad. So in other words, this 35 degrees will be supplementary to y, and your reason will be opposite angles of a cyclic quad. So hy gaan 145 grade wees. And then for z, there were two different ways that you could do it. The easiest way was to just work with met een omwenteling. So onthou een omwenteling is 360 grade, so then you just subtract the 70 degrees. Okay, when we get to number 2, you can calculate x by using the opposite angles of a cyclic quad. So because that is a cyclic quad, x will be supplementary to the 118 degrees. And then to calculate y, you could use angle at the circle circumference, or angle at the midpoint is 2 times angle at the circle circumference, because EG subtends y at the midpoint, and EG subtends x at the circle circumference. So you just divide it by 2 to get x. Om vir z te kry kon jy weer 'n omwenteling gebruik het. Okay, when we get to this one, you had to see that KL subtends all 3 of those angles at the circle circumference. So met ander woorde, x en z sal gelyk wees aan 30 grade, hoeke in dieselfde cirkelsegment. But this angle is also subtended by KL, but it is at the midpoint of the circle. So in other words, y would be equal to 60, and your reason will be angle at the midpoint is double angle at the circle circumference. Goed, vir hierdie ene is die maklikste plek om te begin by x. So jy kan sê hierdie 69 grade is die buitehoek van 'n kwade vierhoek. So the exterior angle of a cyclic quad is equal to the opposite interior angle, en dis waar jy dan x vandaan kry. Ek skryf nou die redes hier neer, julle het daar in die memo. And then to do z, or let's do y first, you use your theorem that says this q and s subtends x at the circle circumference, and it subtends y at the circle's midpoint. So y will be equal to 138. As my wiskunde my nie nou in die steek laat nie, want die middelpuntshoek is 2 keer die omtrekshoek. Okay, and then for z, you could either use opposite angles of a cyclic quad, or you could have used angles on a straight line to calculate the value of z. Okay, as ons by nommer 5 uitkom, moes jy gesien het dat AC is die middellyn van die circle. So if this is the diameter of the circle, then it means that x will be equal to 90 degrees because it is an angle in a semicircle. And then you can just use some angles of triangle to calculate y. Dan om vir z te kry, kon jy of gaan werk het met teenoorstaande hoeke van 'n koorde vierhoeke supplementêr, because you have the 66, you have the 44, and you calculated the y, so you can calculate the z, because those 4 added together must give you 180. Or you could have gone and said the angle A, B, C, C must be equal to 90 degrees, angle in semicircle, en dan gebruik jy net hoeke van 'n driehoek. Okay, when we're getting to this one, you had to see that z would give you, kom ons begin liewers by x. So because this is a tangent, and that is a chord, you can say the angle between the tangent and the chord is equal to the angle in the opposite circle segment. So dan gaan jy sê x is gelyk aan 65 grade en is die raaklyn koordstelling. You could do exactly the same for y, or you could have gone and said this one must be equal to that one. So PF is equal to PH because they're from a common point, omdat hulle raaklyn uit dieselfde punt is. En dan is Y ook gelyk aan 65 grade hoeke teenoor gelyke sye. So al twee is reg. And then once again, you had to see that that is subtended by FH. And that is subtended by FH. This one is at the circle's midpoint. This one is at the circle's circumference. So Z moet dubbel 65 grade wees. So hy sal 130 wees. Okay. Then starting with this one, if that is a tangent and that is a chord, then that means that this angle must be equal to that angle. The tangent chord theorem gives you that. So X will also be equal to 73 degrees. Dan om die hoek Y uit te werk, gaan ek nog steeds met die raaklyn werk, maar hierdie keer met hierdie koord. And then you can say that that angle must be equal to that angle, same theorem. En dan om vir Z uit te werk, kon jy of gaan sê het hoeke op 'n reguit lyn, of jy kon gaan sê het hoeke van 'n driehoek, it doesn't matter. Okay, next one, we can start off once again by using our tangent chord theorem to say that this angle X must be equal to 53 degrees, want is die hoek tussen die raaklyn en die koord is gelyk aan die hoek in die teenoorstaande sirkelsegment. Sien jy, ons gebruik hierdie dan as die basis van die driehoek. Then for the angle Z, the easiest way to do is to say that the angle BAC will be equal to 90 degrees. Hierdie ene gaan gelyk wees aan 90 grade. Hoeke in 'n halwe sirkel. And then you use angles on a straight line to calculate Z. And once you have Z, then you can say we have this tangent and chord, which must be equal. So raaklyn koord, dan moet hy gelyk wees aan die hoek in die teenoorstaande sirkelsegment. So Y sal gelyk wees aan Z. Okay. Getting to number 9. Julle moet maar die ding pause deurgaan en seker maak julle kom by die regte vragies uit. This is an exterior angle of a cyclic quad. In other words, it must be equal to that. So you can use that to calculate the angle Z. Then for this one, it's one of those weird ones that are subtended by the same chord or the same arc. Hulle twee word onderspan deur dieselfde boog, maar jy werk die buitekant en die binnekant. So in other words, to get the angle X, you had to say 230 divided by 2 because its angle at the midpoint of the circle is double angle at the circle circumference. And then if you have X, then you can calculate Y because the opposite angles of a cyclic quad, hier is jou koorde vierhoek, en die teenoorstaande hoeke van 'n koorde vierhoek moet supplementêr wees. 2 more to go. Once again, we have the exterior angle of a cyclic quad. Daar was my koorde vierhoek. So in other words, X must be equal to 64 degrees. Exterior angle of a cyclic quad. Dan moet julle sien, hierdie hele ene, hy word so en so geonderspan. So in other words, if they indicate it like this, then it means that whole thing is Y, and Y will be equal to 1, 2, 8, want die middelpunthoek is gelyk aan 2 keer die omtrekshoek. And then to calculate Z, we're going to do a few things. The first thing you had to do is you had to say that the angle FOG will be equal to the angle GOH. And the reason for that is gelyke koorde, equal chords, gelyke hoeke. Okay, so ek wil net gou daar stil staan. Omdat hierdie twee koorde ewe lank is, beteken dit die hoeke wat hulle onderspan, of dit nou by die sirkel se middelpunt is, of sê nou maar dit onderspan by die sirkel se rand, is gelyk aan mekaar. So because those two are equal, you can then go and say that means that each of them will be equal to 64 degrees. Dan gaan ons verder en ons sê in hierdie driehoekie moet jy kan sien dat daai is 'n radius en hierdie is 'n radius. And because both of them are radii, it means that they must be equal to one another. So the line OF will be angle equal to the line OG because they are radius. And therefore, you can use angles opposite equal sides and angles of a triangle to calculate the size of Z. Goed, en dan die laaste ene wat ek saam met julle wil doen. We can see that x must be equal to 20 degrees, sorry, just 20, because this is a line from the midpoint of the circle. It is perpendicular to a chord, so in other words, it would bisect it. Met ander woorde, hy deel hulle gelyk in ewe groot dele. Bly skryf grade. To calculate y, you can just use Pythagoras. Maar jy kan hom nie net so gebruik nie. Kom ek kry gou eers hierdie ene vir julle reg. Die radius sal gelyk wees aan y en dit sal ook gelyk wees aan z plus 8. If you look at that, and that must be the radius. So when we're looking in the triangle, we can say that y squared is equal to 20 squared plus z plus 8 squared, en dan gaan jy Pythagoras gebruik en gelyktydige oplossing om hom uit te werk.